their measurement on the initial round was the equivalent of taking the first data point and the last data point and drawing a straight line between them and saying this represents the motion. It's simply not a valid way to measure what they say they're measuring. Yet the basis of their initial denial of free fall. For a high school student to do this kind of analysis on a lab, they'd get a low grade. For NIST to do this kind of analysis is fraudulent. NIST desperately wanted to claim that free fall did not occur because they knew that actual free fall would be a smoking gun for demolition. They also knew that free fall did occur. So instead of a head-on comparison of the acceleration of the building to the acceleration of gravity, they focused on the completely meaningless notion of free fall time. They said that the fall of the building took longer than free fall time, and to make even this work, they had to falsify their time measurement. Here's the 5.4 second interval they measured. The supposed event they chose to start their clock is a point in the middle of an ongoing period of disruption of the building's structure, but it was well before the actual downward motion. Jeremy Hammond has taken a different approach to the question of NIST's timing. He communicated with me about over the last few months. He wrote a detailed article which is available at the Foreign Policy Journal website. NIST measurements are based on a video taken from West Street near Harrison Street, which they label as camera 3. That's this picture here. The camera has an upward-looking view toward WTC 7. That video shows a kink that develops in the roofline prior to the fall of the building. He also determined by comparison with other videos that the kink is not a vertical dip. It's not a dip in the roofline. It's a horizontal fold. Okay? The simple proof of this is the fold is visible only from below. Now this one is looking from a camera at the same level as the roofline, and notice how level the roofline remains throughout the fall, as a matter of fact. The penthouse collapses into the building, but if you take the roofline itself, it remains level. You never do see a kink. So it's not something dipping downward at all. It's something folding, so the building is being deformed horizontally. Since camera 3 has an upward angled line of sight, a horizontal fold is indistinguishable from a vertical kink. Therefore, by choosing a tracking point near the center of the roofline and an angle of sight that's looking up, NIST was maximizing the ambiguity of whether it's horizontal or vertical. It appears this is the basis of their claim that the downward motion of the roofline began 1.5 seconds before downward motion actually began. The scientists at NIST had access to many videos from different perspectives, including all of these. They had to be aware that the collapse of the building was a three-dimensional event and that their chosen video had a line of sight that introduced ambiguity into the measurement. In a sense, this ambiguity was the solution they were looking for. By playing dumb and conveniently misinterpreting the orientation of the fold, they got their extra seconds. As Jeremy states in the abstract of his paper, quote, NIST's chosen methodology for determining the point in time representing the onset of global collapse is not merely fallacious, but indicative of a willful and deliberate effort to deceive the public and obfuscate the implications of free fall through scientific fraud. And I concur. On August 26, 2008, NIST held a technical briefing conference, and I was able to ask a question. I cited the fact that a number of people had measured the motion of the building and had determined it was within a few percent of free fall. Yet the report claims it fell 40% slower than free fall. Then I asked, how can such a publicly visible, easily measurable quantity be set aside? Sunder's answer was that free fall happens when there is no structural resistance. Free fall would have taken 3.9 seconds, but their model showed it should have come down in 5.4 seconds. The 5.4 seconds of their model was reasonable because there was structural resistance. There was a series of failures that had to take place, and they were not all simultaneous. The question here was how the video evidence that free fall actually occurred can be set aside. Sunder's answer is that their model showed that free fall could not have occurred. That's his answer. Sunder is elevating their model above the direct evidence, and that is not science. Sunder's response typifies the entire investigation. What they did was they substituted a computer model, or several computer models, for the actual physical evidence. Taking the evidence out of the picture insulated them from having to go where the evidence leads, because they didn't like what they saw down that road. NIST's model is based on the assumption that WTC 7 came down as a natural collapse due to fire, gravity, and buckling columns. Since their model could not produce a free fall collapse, and since the video evidence shows that free fall actually occurred, their model is wrong, and the assumptions behind their model are wrong.